Money is not just about numbers on a spreadsheet or transactions in a bank account. Welcome to Ideas for Impact, the channel where we talk all things business, sustainability, and impact. For impact leaders and social entrepreneurs, money is often charged with meaning. So much meaning, shaped by our own personal experiences, societal conditioning, and inherited beliefs that we have about money. And more often than not, those carry significant weight for us: emotional weight, psychological weight, and strategic weight. In the world of impact, where the goal is transformation, not just profit, money can feel like a major paradox for many, many leaders. It can be both the fuel and the friction that founders or leaders or leadership teams experience within their particular organization or company. And for many impact driven founders, it becomes one of the biggest barriers to growth, not because of what's actually in the bank account, but because of what's in the narrative that that founder or company is telling themselves about their relationship with money. So if you're building something to change the world as a social entrepreneur, a regenerative venture, a climate tech company, a community-rooted startup, and yet you feel guilt around money, discomfort with sales, with profits, a resistance to things like investment or resistance to things like sales, this conversation is exactly for you. Because if we want our ventures to be sustainable and be able to achieve the impacts that we seek, we need to start with the truth. Money is not the opposite of mission. It truly is just a tool for being able to realize our missions. So let's start by naming these patterns that we all experience, right? Every human that has come in contact with the world and with their experience of money has been conditioned in some shape or form around their relationship with money. But many impact leaders enter this space with very strong conviction, with a cause, right? A reason to challenge the norm. But when the work shifts from really this idea stage to something that's much more operational, from vision to venture to scaling, money, of course, is critical, but also becomes this source of discomfort for many people. And it's not because it's irrelevant, but because it's deeply relevant and at the same time deeply misunderstood. You know, what we see often is you might underprice your offering or your product because it feels wrong to charge too much. You might avoid seeking capital or investors because you're afraid it will dilute your values as an impact driven leader. You might resist scaling your business because financial growth feels like a betrayal to your purpose and your mission. And, you know, these are all real. These are the things that we've heard from many different impact entrepreneurs and leaders all around North America. And these aren't just financial decisions. These are big strategic decisions that any organization might be making. And these are, at the end, though, or what they become, these become emotional decisions. They are rooted in our own personal stories, stories that are deeply linked to purpose, to sacrifice, and profit, to compromise. And unless we confront, you know, these stories that we all experience in our own unique ways, depending on our own unique experiences in this world, growing up, our family dynamics, our professional dynamics and stories, they can quietly really control how we build organizations, how we build teams, how we build ideas. And this is the undercurrent that truly runs throughout the entire impact sector, whether you're an impact sort of nonprofit or a foundation or an impact venture or impact startup. I don't care who you are experiencing some shape or form of this. And, when we do talk to leaders, they all really, when they hear this idea that like, hey, money, our relationship with money actually really deeply influences the way we make decisions in our professional life, and most certainly in terms of how we make decisions in impact focused companies. And they all sort of agree and share with us very their own experiences that they have had with this and the challenges that those pose for them as well. This is quiet but persistent for a lot of leaders. But we need to recognize that this has major negative consequences for not only those leaders, those organizations, but for the general impact sector, right? We want impact entrepreneurs and impact organizations to succeed. We want them to create the impact that they seek to create. And we don't want them to do that at the cost of their own, well-being, or to sacrifice their own values. And we need to make sure that, mission-driven leaders, they should care about money. Money is important. And as we said, it is a tool. We need to think about as a tool that enables us to do the things that we need to be able to resource our activities, our strategies, to reach that impact that we seek to create in the world. And so, often we don't want leaders to be avoiding financial conversations or decisions. We don't want them to be underinvesting in their own operations and then sacrificing their own growth or the growth of their teams. We don't want them to refuse to build out that team because, they feel it's going to cost them money. At the end of the day, that's investment into their own impact. And we don't want leaders to be struggling with burnout, instability, and missed opportunity, and feeling like they're constantly working and living in scarcity, in this state of scarcity. None of that is strategic, and none of it actually it leads to better impact, right? It doesn't allow us to build better organizations, and none of it is necessary. This is where we bring in this really important framework called trauma of money, developed by the fabulous Chantel Chapman. It is, a critical tool and methodology that we like bringing into a lot of our conversations with leaders that are trying to create impact into this world. And this methodology looks deeply at our own financial behavior through the lens of lived experience, through the lens of systemic inequalities, systemic conditioning, and emotional narratives that exist for everybody. You're human. You've got some kind of a behavior you've built or conditioned for yourself around money, around capital. Financial trauma is a very, very real thing, and especially for those that work in the impact space. And many founders in the impact space have experienced some kind of financial instability, whether that was in their, upbringing, in their current sort of home situation, in their professional career. And many come from communities that were excluded traditionally from financial systems, or were excluded from being able to gain or retain capital. Many were taught that explicitly or implicitly that money is either corrupt or dangerous or out of their own reach. That kind of conditioning doesn't just go away when we start a company or an organization. It truly does impact us for the rest of our lives. Those, that conditioning has major implications throughout our careers. And I know many of the incredible people that have gone through trauma of money, the many certified trauma of money coaches and facilitators, they themselves are still working through a lot of that conditioning, because as we know, there is, if we want to act differently, not only do we need to learn how to do things differently, we need to unlearn all the things that we've been conditioned to believe and conditioned to do. Um, and again, all of this shows up in so many different ways in our companies, everything from pricing our products to how we grow, how we lead, how we seek out capital. And, one of the most common symptoms that we see for impact leaders is this scarcity mindset that is almost prevalent in the impact and impact innovation space, social innovation spaces all around the world. This is really where founders are operating, leaders are operating in this scarcity mindset, where we're thinking about survival versus strategy, where every decision is made from this place of fear of losing money or not having enough. What if we can't raise enough? What if we can't have enough money to pay for our staff or pay for our activities? What if we lose the funding from from an organization or investor or a product we're selling? And what if success changes us? And it's always this mindset of the fear, of a place of fear. And we don't want to be in that place of fear because we don't make the best decisions for our organizations, for ourselves, and certainly not for the impact that we're trying to achieve, right? And that fear makes very bold long-term planning nearly impossible, because if we're coming at any kind of decision or any kind of growth pathway, we are just not going to be able to make a great strategy. It prevents us from really building a plan for scalable or meaningful or deep impact, and really being able to invest in those opportunities to create the impact that we seek. Or that we see in front of us. So another symptom that we see a lot of the times is what we've already mentioned a couple of times, which is this guilt, this big guilt around pricing. It is so big. Sometimes it's very explicit. Sometimes it's very implicit. But this is when teams or leaders don't actually price their products or services in a way that is competitive. And this is a sacrifice that we see that lots of do, and comes from this scarcity mindset. There's an association sometimes with, if we price this product too high, then somehow it sort of makes the work of impact less meaningful, or it means that we're not serious enough impact. But the reality is that, like, if we're underpricing our value as a company, or the product we're selling, or sometimes the services we're selling, we're going to be at a disadvantage as an organization, and that teams, your employees, are going to be at a disadvantage because they're not paid for the work that they do. The reality is that underpricing is actually very, very unsustainable for the majority of organizations that exist out there, because they don't allow you to have a sustainable revenue model that works. And so if you don't have a revenue model that works for you, you're not going to be able to achieve the impact that you seek to achieve through your organization. If you can't pay people the value and the salaries that they deserve, if you can't grow your infrastructure or invest in your product development, if you can't reinvest in some shape or form in your business mission, then what you've built ultimately is very vulnerable to these bigger fundraising cycles, to these bigger economic cycles that are out of your control. The reality is that purpose and mission and money have to work together. It is not a competition. It has to be an alignment. This is what we've been getting so wrong in the impact sector for so long, is that these things are not mutually exclusive. They have to work together. And the reality is, though, that when we look across the ecosystem, a lot of impact leaders sometimes avoid financial strategy, financial diversification altogether, or they delay that process because they have blockers on around it, right? They shy away from fundraising activities because, again, they have an association with capital, with money. So it's a much bigger personal issue for a lot of folks than just something that's like a strategic initiative or activity within a company or organization. And they treat money as a separate item or thing, instead of as something that is integral to the work that you do. But if we want to build resilient companies and organizations and ventures, then this has to change, right? In order for us to have resilient organizations, that needs to change. We need to normalize financial leadership in the impact space. It's a must. We need to get out of this scarcity mindset, and the work we do is a lot of the times we're working with organizations and leaders to actually help them get out of this space where we know that they're not actually thriving themselves, nor are their teams. And this starts with even the conditioning and the reality that most of us growing up of a certain decade and above is financial literacy, and just not having that as an option in school, or not having access to financial literacy, and recognizing that actually financial literacy is a core part of any kind of leadership role, any kind of role in general, right? It's sort of like financial literacy is critical for life. It's a critical life skill, and most of us weren't taught that in school, right? And so we need to, and that helps us. Financial literacy actually helps us dismantle our own internalized beliefs, that tell us that having money means compromising something else, or compromising on our values, or compromising our relationship. That is just not true. We need to shift those narratives. And when we start seeing money as a resource, not as a risk, we can really unlock, many different things and potential for ourselves as individuals, but also for the organizations and the teams that we lead. Making profit does not mean selling out. Fundraising for investment doesn't mean you're giving up all control. Financial clarity doesn't mean you care less. It means you're more informed and can make better decisions. Ultimately, it means all of these things mean you're building with true integrity, because you're understanding all the various components that make up your business success. And let's be clear, financial trauma is not a personal flaw. It's a product of the systems that were never built for impact and creating good, never built for equity, for regeneration, you name it. They weren't built for that. These are the systems that encourage profit at all cost. These are systems that encourage hoarding over sharing, and the collective good, extraction over contribution, performance over healing, you name it. These are systems that were not designed for all of us to succeed, and certainly for impact organizations to succeed, right? And so it is all our jobs to actually be able to rebuild our own relationships with money, and then that of the organizations or ventures or funds that we lead. And we do have that opportunity to actually be able to shift that mindset. And there's lots of work that everybody has to do on their own. And of course, it also, this idea of mindset, but it really is a skill, right? Like, this is a skill. We need more founders that are more comfortable with things like, pricing, or modeling their cash flows, or just understanding their capital structures on a cap table, and that is okay. They should know that, and it makes them a better decision maker and a better leader. And in that, we need better conversations and more conversations about ethical investments, about what earned revenue models look like, what blended finance actually means, and why it's important, and why long-term financial health for our organizations and companies and funds and individuals is critical to the success of people all around the world, and especially to those that are leading in the impact space, not just in the for-profit, sort of public market space. Look, it's not just, the goal isn't just to launch ventures that have purpose. It's to make sure they stay alive. It's to make sure that those ventures thrive in the long run, to ensure that, 5, 10, 20 years down the road, those same ventures are still solving the major problems that they've set out to solve, and really being resilient, being effective, and actually reaching the impact that they seek to achieve as organizations. And this is important, right? we believe that the future of impact leadership, or I believe that the future of impact leadership isn't just about choosing between mission and purpose and money. It's about integrating them all together fully, unapologetically, strategically, so you can build the impact purpose businesses that you want to see in the world so that you can achieve the impact that you've set out to achieve. And that's really what it takes to build ventures that don't, you're not just making headlines, you're actually changing and shifting systems, right? So we're so excited to open up this conversation. We know all of you in the impact space have the ability to lead. We know you have the ability to change the world with the work that you're doing in your ventures and your funds and your organizations. And we know you're going to be able to do it. And we're so excited to cheer you on. If you like this video, we're Ideas for Impact, where we talk all things business, sustainability, and impact. Follow us, share your stories and comments, subscribe, and we can't wait to see you in the next video.